one more time, and hopefully it's the final time, to include that $5,000 assessment for redistribution. And if there's anything else that the commission thinks needs to be adjusted, this would be the time to do it. And so I would suggest that the board instruct the commissioners to file one more revision by October 7th. And then if the board approves that, tentatively, you would then schedule what would hopefully be the final public hearing in compliance with the requirements of 40 days or more out with 20 days of notice. And then that would potentially be the final hearing on commissioner's report that might be approved on October 7th. Tentatively approved on October 7th, subject to final hearing as set with notice. So I would suggest at this time, if there's any further public comment, that the board entertain any further public comments on the commissioner's report that was filed on September 10th.
I just want to make sure that I have the right report.
I was going to see how yours went. Here's the summary I did. Revised cost, yep, it's revised cost. That's the total, and here's how much the reduction is.
I didn't do the math, I'm
Yeah.
assuming that must be about it. That's the last one they gave us here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that matches there.
Just want to know we're on the same page.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I should also add that Rick has advised me that he's discovered some savings because some costs might have been duplicated. Savings of approximately 5% that lowers the overall project cost. What can you tell me?
There's about 9% savings. At one point, I was gathering summaries for the cost that was tied up in this project to date. So I had a number to spread cost over. Found out later that I got a total from the city and what I thought was separate invoices. Those invoices were already in the total. So what I've been able to do is reduce the asking total $150,000, or about 9%. What happened, that more than made up for the 4-point-some% increase we were going to see because of the properties that were annexed and shouldn't be paying. So dollar-wise, nobody's went up, but the percent some of them were paying went up. So that would lead people to believe that we should have another hearing on this. So.
Is that 9% difference in that September 10th
Yes, it is.
commission's report?
The total levied, if this is the amount you decide to do, is $1,100,000, and it was $1,250,000 before.
What about the costs that are being incurred right now for every action, obviously?
They'll have to be added on.
Okay. So I was gonna say, we're gonna go to another notification, which is a substantial cost.
Yes.
Do we have any more comments or objections? Mark?
Rick, is the interest in that to date about?
Well, about,
Some of it.
as of the 9th, yeah, 95, 98% of the interest is in there, because what I did is I got the current figure from the county recently to include, to come up with that number. So it's-
That's 6% paid to for
Yes.
holding the warrants,
Yes, yep.
nothing else?
I'd like to comment, this doesn't have anything to do with the dollars, it's the representation. Maybe you can help me with that. We're in the, outside the confines of the city limits, and so we technically, even though we have trustees, don't have any, we used to have the supervisors as a trustee. And since now I don't have anybody to go to.
The code does provide for a drainage district to be transferred to a city. So it is within the code. You would have to challenge the constitutionality of that code section that allows it. So That has been done. The district was transferred over to the city years ago, and it's pursuant to the code.
Well, I was just wondering about the establishment of the board themselves, if you know, if you could add a board member, is there a number of board, is there a certain number of trustees you can have, or? I contacted the Center for Ag Law and Taxation. I haven't gone down and talked to him in detail, Roger, probably know. I just wondered if there's,
One thing we discussed, I think at a previous meeting, was that if the county board of supervisors was acting as trustees, they'd be using Rick Hopper for the engineering work. If they had a commission to determine the classifications, they would appoint Rick Hopper as the engineer and 2 other people to be on the commission. I think that when it comes to the taxation, I think the commissioners are key, because those are the people that decide how much you'll pay. So I don't, you know, the city council people and the county supervisors aren't the ones out in the fields and looking over the aerial maps.
that's my question, I just wondered who had the oversight, so it's more the commissioners than the trustees.
True, that's who ends up trying to put the numbers together.
Now,
That was Dick Nave and David Hunter Martin.
Well, my question was, I invited all the trustees out to my place, and you were the only one that came out by special request. So, and clarified my question. So
Sure.
I'm satisfied with the answer. That's all I want. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Just one, coming back to Aaron's question about who pays for the additional when something gets missed and it has to be redone. At what point can the city say, no, if you didn't do it right the first time, we're not paying you anything? If you made a mistake and missed a parcel, then that's on you, we're not paying for it.
Well, this actually goes back to Julie Perdolson, doesn't it? The original.
Yeah, it goes back that
drainage
far
clerk.
when the notices were missed. Several years ago, with the former drainage clerk, is where those were missed. At that point, they were doing that notice.
I don't know if anybody has the notice handy. I've never seen it, but I understand that the number of property owners in this area, because of the city and the small parcels, how many people are affected?
There were
as
over
owners?
2,200 parcels.
So, it's hard to do everything perfectly, whether you're the engineer, whether you're the filer, the attorney. It's hard to do everything perfectly, and it's an administrative nightmare, in my opinion, to try to keep track of all those parcel owners. And, you know, for example, you think back to when the district was created, was it 1905 or 1915? When they do
Right,
an
in that
assessment and they figure out who the property owners are, and then 100 years later, you gotta literally go through the plat book and track down 2,000 property owners. To me, that's forgivable, that a property owner may be listed. Now, in this case, we cannot legally force that property owner. We can't force the assessment on them because they weren't given notice. They did benefit. We've quantified in dollar amounts the amount that they benefited. I've seen it happen in one other district where it happened, that the property owner wasn't given legal notice. So they sent them an invoice and basically said, you know, you benefited from this, and technically we can't legally force you to pay this, but would you? And in that county, they did. Now, if they'd refused, you know, that'd be the end of it. But those people in that situation recognized that they got benefit. They may not have been, their name might not have been in the notice, but they still paid what was determined to be their fair share. And that can be done here, but legally, can we enforce it? No. Do we want to get sued for not doing it perfectly? No. So we're trying to, with the help of everybody here, I mean, this has been a joint project. People are coming forth, expressing concerns, legal points. We take them into consideration. If they haven't been noticed, we're not gonna force it and be sued. So, you know, at some point there are compromises, and we can only do what's humanly possible. So missing a landowner in a notice, it can happen, especially when you've got 2,000 property owners. And basically, I think it was If it was a drainage clerk, you know, do you expect the drainage clerk to pay that out of their pocket? I don't think you would ask for that. But, you know, mistakes happen, and everybody can only do their best.
Well, I understand that, and what I would suggest to you is that if I hire a plumber to come fix my sink, and he doesn't do it right the first time, I don't pay him the second time when he comes back. And I doubt that you do. And, you know, it isn't, you can say, well, gee, nobody's perfect, but, if we're buying something from an engineering firm, then we ought to get what we pay for. So,
But we're not responsible for the notice.
did you put the list together?
No.
Who
The
did?
county puts the list together from their records with acres and everything else,
Okay.
so. Yeah, we then take their list and we have a spreadsheet and we start out with the acres and average benefit, and we complete the spreadsheet, but know all those ownership and acres come from them.
Okay.
I can tell you one thing is that everything in this district has been updated extensively, so that if there's any work done in the future, the records are gonna be very good.
How is the percentage of average benefit returned?
The commissioners and I worked out a range where we wanted different types of ground to come out so it would be fair comparing one parcel to another. For example, residential in Dakota City in the north where this big improvement was done, they have 104 acres that has a completely independent system, takes it to the river. Great benefit. Humboldt residential property, there was 104 acres that used to come through their system, but that's out of 1,000 or more acres, so their benefit was something less. Agricultural ground was again considerably less than the Humboldt residential. So we worked out the point ranges we wanted these to fall into, each of the category having a range, and then we used things like impervious area for the residential areas and commercial, and we used things like soils characteristics for the agricultural, and saw where those would all come out. We went through all of that at least twice and did some other adjustments because we weren't satisfied with how those were coming out. So the commissioners and I met on multiple occasions, reviewing everything, doing further adjustments until we felt that everybody fell in the appropriate range and had an appropriate value put in. And we use 100 points per acre for the property getting the most benefit, and then graduate that downwards, depending on how much smaller benefit they have. So the range is from 0 to 100 basically, or that's what it can be in the average benefit.
On the impervious nature of the properties, I'm wondering, like Iowa City, they say has an ordinance that you can't, every property has to improve the drainage, you can't make the drainage worse?
Yes.
So are they able to buy credit somehow? How does that work?
They usually try and do it on their own property. I worked in Ames for a consulting firm, and that was back in the 70s. They had an same ordinance. You do things like design parking lots that have a depression in them with an intake to take the water slow.
We got the pond up at the new
Yep,
area there, yeah.
yep. There's many of the major cities have that in their ordinances. As a matter of fact, sensitive areas like the Okoboji area, they have that. where
But
you
how
have to-
does that work buying?
Well, it depends on the particular city and what they'll allow them to do. You can do it with wetlands and agricultural, but I don't know how they do it with I don't know how the cities have it worked out.
So Iowa City might have set aside wetlands that you can,
They could have areas set aside, I don't know if they do. I don't know how they trade acres or how they, if they can't do it on their own property, I don't know what their option is in these cities. I'm not dealing with that.
In Des Moines, we're charged $5 for every 1,000 square feet of impervious. It comes on your water bill. So if I've got a 10,000 square foot parking lot, I pay $50 a month. And it's a way of the city generating storm sewer money. And it generates a lot of money. It's $5 per 1,000 square feet of impervious, which includes driveways, garages, buildings.
Then the city does the improvements
Yeah,
as far
then
as?
then they don't tax anybody, they just do the improvements out of that money.
Maybe that's how
It's a
That could
storm,
be
it's a stormwater
market.
utility.
We print the notices for increase, so I'm familiar with it. It increases it every few months. But right now, it's about $5.36 or something per 1,000 square feet per month. And then they don't try to assess anybody, the money's just there in a pool to fix storm projects.
Alrighty. Any other comments?
I do have another question, since my driveway has not been put back into condition, nor has my property been put back into the condition it was before the 2009 project. It's gonna cost me a pretty sum to get it there, because no one has fixed it.
DD
Do they
80
still plan to fix my property?
DD 80 is under the jurisdiction of Humboldt County. So I guess what we should probably do is meet with the supervisors and talk through how to handle that. I did look at it with her, and it appears that the rock that went back in had more fines in it than they had, so that stops the water. Topsoil was part of an issue. I don't know if we can do something with fertilizing or whatever, but I should probably get the supervisors involved in that. It's not a city issue since it's DD 80. I'll try and do something with the supervisors, Deb.
Okay. Thank you.
If there are no more comments or objections from the public in attendance, we need a motion directing the commissioners to revise the reclassification and have it filed by October 7th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Then there being no more comments or objections on County Drainage District 13A, I will close the public hearing